IU. I've been painting for a long time, too long, 20 years and more.
I'm a journalist at the Indiana Daily Student. I write about anything local music.
I grew up in New York and went to the museum since I was a kid, and I had always, it was a magical place looking at paintings and always just being fascinated by that kind of alchemy of paint, like that you just painting these colors, brushstrokes, shapes, and then boom, you get this image.
I really didn't get started thinking about journalism until like towards the end of senior year of high school last year. I was just sort of thinking about what I was going to do in school and with my life in general. That summer I started freelancing at my hometown paper. Like, okay, this is cool enough. When I got here in the fall, I started writing for the IDS, just general stuff, and then this spring I got the job as the local music beat reporter.
I went to grad school at Brooklyn College and got an MFA. Then I lived in New York for about 10 years, really, before I came out here. Actually, in college, I was not an art major. I was a psychology major, so people are always reading that into my paintings, which I don't think is really the case.
And when I started freelancing, I started like realizing like, oh, I'm like going out and I'm learning like all these different stories like every day. Like one of my first stories at my hometown paper was this like bait shop, coffee shop. It was getting torn down, and so I like went and I like talked to all these people and I learned the story of it, and it's cool to like immerse yourself into these stories.
I think when I first started taking painting classes when I was in college, and I was taking more academic classes, and I was writing a lot of papers, and a lot of my world was very, very verbal. When I'd get to painting class, it was like a whole other thing of this very clicked on part of my brain that was non-verbal, that was very exciting. It was like all of a sudden 3 hours would go by. It was like I didn't know what happened, and so that just really kind of like turned me on to it. It was like, oh, this is a whole other way to think about things, very spatial and kind of figuring out the gestalt of things as opposed to writing something in words. There was a certain facility I wanted to have with paint, or it's not even skill, it's like a kind of ease with paint, the way you would have ease with language, so that you can use it to directly express what you want to express and you're not always stumbling over the paint itself. I paint from things, figures, still lifes, landscapes. A lot of times there's a kind of narrative or psychological element. I'm going for a certain verisimilitude, that you would know what you're looking at when you look at my paintings. It's not like you're guessing. But then within that, it's quite open to interpretation what somebody might think is going on in this painting. It would be up to you, really, and as far as I'm concerned, whatever you think is going on is going on.
Definitely every time I turn in a story, I hope this person that I'm quoting, when they read this, they don't think that's not what I meant at all. Like, that's really my biggest fear, to like misrepresent what somebody was trying to say. But I mean, when I go like into an interview, I try to keep my questions like as non-pointed as possible, but I mean, you're going in with sort of a goal in mind. Like, what you want your story to be about, and what your people say will definitely like change what you're gonna say, but you kind of know what you're wanting to talk about. That's like I'll ask them a question and they'll be like blah blah blah, give some like dumb response, and so I'll just like think of, okay, how can I rephrase this so they're like more compelled to like answer in a more detailed way and actually like give me some material to work with. Because oftentimes like I'll talk to people in crowds and get interviews with them, and they'll just say, yeah, it's cool, that's why I'm here, and it's just like, it's unusable to just like quote like John Doe says it's cool. It gets kind of wacky in some places. Like, we recently talked about diversity in my journalism writing class, and it's just weird. Like, you're supposed to like seek out these like minorities and everything for your stories. Like or the story might not necessarily be about them, but see what they have to say like about it. Like, seek out the minorities, like this this doesn't sound right. Like, whoever's like best for the story, that's who I'm gonna find, and I'm not just gonna like find minorities. Like, I read one article recently about this she's either Australian or from New Zealand, musician Courtney Barnett, and the person who wrote the article, the way they went about the article was like, I spent 48 hours with Courtney Barnett, and so it was a story of spending time with Courtney Barnett and her band entirely from the eyes of the journalist. And so it's just an entirely flip side to the whole objective thing that newspapers are so steadfast about.
And they can be actually two different interpretations. Well, I had this painting that I painted of a woman cutting a guy's hair, you know, and the guy is sitting on a bed and the woman is leaning over him cutting his hair. And so it's kind of a charged image, and some people would look at that painting and say, oh, looks like she's just going to kill him. You know, like it looks like a violent, and you think of Samson and Delilah, and there's a kind of power thing there. And then other people have looked at that painting and think, oh, that's so intimate and, you know, tender moment. So within that one scene, you could think both those things, you know.
Newspaper writing is just so steadfast about it has to be objective, it has to be objective, it has to be objective. I'll try to insert something in my story sort of describing the music at some place, and they're like, well, did you have anybody that like said this to you, or like, is this you? Because if it's you, we can't really use it because you're just supposed to be like the observer and not really commenting on anything.
What I actually think is going on changes, you know. I'll come back and I think, no, this is what's really going on in this painting, you know. So that kind of psychological element in it doesn't let you be completely objective, you know. Whereas appearance, maybe you can say, well, there's something objective about appearance, just strict appearance, what you think something. But even that, truthfully, the longer you get into it, there's always, I mean, painters who really paint from things, that's one of the things you realize after a while, all the questioning of what something looks like, you know, you really can't quite get to the total bottom of it, you know. And that's part of the fun of it. It's actually part of what's interesting, is realizing you have to, it's a dynamic relationship. It isn't just like, oh yes, that's it. That's exactly what it looks like. It's not, and even, it's not like taking a photograph, which a photograph to some extent can represent something at an exact moment in time. It's like, all right, there it is, boom, you shot it. And maybe even that's not a complete reality, but it is one exact moment in time, and it is a singular instance. Whereas painting, you paint it over extended period of time, in which you end up is that one single object. So that one single object represents many frames in it. So it can't be just one truth. It has like, yeah.
Awesome,
yeah.